The desert was endless. Captain Elias Trent had been walking for 3 hours since the sandstorm died down, and every step sank into the soft orange dust. His ship lay somewhere behind him, half buried under a dune after the storm had tossed it like a toy. The hull was cracked, the comms fried, and the oxygen tanks were leaking. He carried only a small pack of tools and a half-full canteen. He was looking for anything, wreckage, supplies, maybe another ship, that could help him get back into space. The horizon shimmered under the harsh twin suns. It was hard to tell if shapes in the distance were real or just tricks of the heat. But then, through the wavering air, he saw movement. Someone was lying beside a half-shattered glider craft. The vehicle's wings were twisted metal, and a thin trail of smoke curled from its side. Elias's instincts told him to be careful. This was an alien border world, and humans weren't always welcome. But the figure wasn't moving much, and the wind was picking up again. He approached slowly, hand resting on the sidearm at his belt. As he got closer, he saw her clearly. A young, beautiful alien woman with rich, teal-blue skin, her face framed by dark, wind-swept hair. Her clothes were torn in places, and her breathing was shallow. She had a soft, natural beauty, the kind that didn't need any ornament or decoration. A beam from the glider had trapped her leg. The metal had bent inward, pinning her in place. Elias crouched beside her. "Hey," he said, voice calm but firm. "Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. They were bright and almost luminous in the sunlight. She said something in a language he didn't know, musical but urgent. Elias tapped the small device on his collar. The universal translator crackled, turning her words into a thin, shaky voice in his ear. "Help! I cannot move." "All right," Elias said, glancing at the beam. "This is gonna hurt." The desert wind roared as he planted his boots in the sand and grabbed the metal with both hands. He strained against it, the heat burning his palms through his gloves. The beam groaned, then shifted just enough for her to pull her leg free. She gasped, clutching at her ankle, but Elias could see it wasn't broken, just badly bruised. He helped her to her feet. She stumbled immediately, so he caught her before she fell. The heat pressed down on them both like a weight, and the dark clouds of another storm were already forming on the horizon. "We need shelter," Elias said. She nodded weakly, leaning on him for support. Together, they left the wreckage behind and moved toward the jagged cliffs he had spotted earlier. Each step was harder than the last. The sand seemed to drag at their boots, and the wind carried sharp grit that stung their faces. By the time they reached a narrow crack in the cliff wall, the sky had darkened. Elias guided her inside. The passage opened into a shallow cave, its walls cool and shadowed. He set her down on a flat rock and dug through his pack for water. "Small sips," he warned, handing her the canteen. She obeyed, her eyes never leaving his face. When she spoke again, the translator hummed. "My name, Soraya Vel." "Elias Trent," he replied. "Cargo pilot from Earth." She tilted her head slightly. "Earth, I know the word." Then, with a faint smile, "You saved my life." Elias shrugged. "Couldn't just leave you out there. Besides," he tried to lighten the mood, "you owe me one now." She frowned slightly at that. "Away?" "It's a human thing," Elias explained. "When someone helps you, sometimes you say, 'You owe me,' means you should help them back someday. Just a saying." Soraya considered this in silence, her gaze thoughtful. Outside, the storm broke, and the sound of rushing wind filled the cave. Elias sat near the entrance, scanning the desert through the blowing sand. If another Valari patrol came by, assuming she was Valari, which he guessed from her features, they might not take kindly to finding a human with one of their own. After a long moment, Soraya spoke again in her own language. The translator took a second, then delivered the words in a soft tone. "Now, I owe you." Elias turned to look at her. There was something in her voice, something serious, almost ceremonial, that made him wonder if she meant it in a way far beyond the human sense of a casual favor. Before he could ask, the cave shuddered. Far away, but still audible over the storm, a deep rumble rolled across the desert, like the sound of a massive engine. Soraya's expression changed. She sat up straighter, eyes fixed on the horizon outside. "What is it?" Elias asked. She didn't. Look at him. "Danger," she said simply. "For both of us." Elias's gut tightened. Whatever trouble he had just stepped into, it was bigger than a broken ship and a sandstorm. And now, he had a feeling this debt she spoke of was going to lead them both straight into it. The storm lasted through the night. Elias didn't sleep much. He kept glancing at the cave entrance, listening to the wind howl and the occasional deep rumble in the distance. His mind was full of questions about the teal-blue alien woman sitting quietly across from him. Soraya Vell. The name sounded smooth and almost regal when spoken aloud. She sat with her back to the stone wall, her long legs folded neatly, eyes half closed but alert. Even in the dim light from his emergency lamp, her presence seemed to fill the space. When morning came, the storm was gone, but the desert looked even more unforgiving than before. A thick layer of dust covered everything, and the air shimmered in the heat. Elias pulled his pack closer, checking his supplies. "I have enough rations for maybe 4 days if we stretch them," he said. Soraya tilted her head. "You have a plan?" "Fix my ship, get off this rock, warn the nearest human outpost." "Warn them of what?" she asked, her tone calm but edged. Elias looked at her. "You tell me. Last night you said there's danger for both of us." Soraya hesitated, then spoke slowly. "This world is close to the hunting grounds of the Nixon. They are not like your kind. They are not like mine either. They take, they learn, and they destroy." Elias frowned. "Never heard of them." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "That is because your people are still far from their reach. If you value your colonies, you will keep it that way." The warning in her voice was clear, but Elias knew he couldn't just walk away from this. If these Nixon were as bad as she made them sound, humans needed to know. He stood and adjusted the straps of his pack. "My ship's a few kilometers back that way," he said, pointing toward a distant dune. "If I can get the comms working, I can send a message out." Soraya rose carefully, testing her injured leg. She limped, but she could move. "If we go, we must avoid open ground. Valari patrols search this area now." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Valari? That's your people?" "Yes," she said simply. "We do not welcome humans here. If they find you with me." She let the thought hang in the air. Elias gave a small, humorless chuckle. "Sounds like I'm popular everywhere I go." They left the cave just after midday. Soraya led the way, moving with surprising grace despite her limp. She kept close to the rocky ridges, using the natural shadows to hide them from the skies. As they walked, Elias offered her a ration pack. She studied the sealed foil, then tore it open with practiced ease. "Your food smells strange," she said, but she ate it anyway. "Not winning any cooking awards, I know," Elias replied. For a while they moved in silence, the only sound, the crunch of sand under their boots. But Elias noticed how her eyes scanned the horizon constantly, as if expecting trouble. Then, without warning, she stopped and held up a hand. "Down," she whispered. They crouched behind a boulder just as a shadow swept over the desert floor. A sleek, crescent-shaped craft glided silently above them, its hull reflecting the sun. Elias caught the faint glimmer of blue markings on its sides, Velari symbols, he guessed. The ship passed, but Soraya didn't move. She kept watching the sky until it disappeared completely. "Friendly?" Elias asked. "To me, yes. To you, no," she said. "They would see you as a trespasser, and trespassers are removed." Elias didn't need a translator to understand what removed meant. They moved on, traveling for another hour before stopping in the shadow of a jagged rock formation. Soraya sat on a low stone and spoke again. "Your people. Do you know how far you are from your own borders?" "About 20 light years," Elias said. "I took a trade run farther than usual. Thought I could make a profit." She gave a small, almost sad smile. "Profit is meaningless when you are hunted." The way she said it made Elias pause. "You've been hunted before?" he guessed. Her eyes met his. "We all have, Captain Trent. Every Velari child learns to run before they can walk. We live in the shadow of the Nixon." Elias absorbed that in silence. This wasn't just a stranger he had rescued. She carried the weight of a danger his people barely knew existed. By late afternoon, they reached the ridge overlooking the crash site of Elias's ship. From here, he could see the long scar in the sand where the storm had pushed it, the jagged tail fin sticking out like a broken tooth. Soraya crouched beside him. "Too open," she said. "If a patrol sees us—" "We'll move fast," Elias replied. "Grab what I need and get back under cover." They descended quickly. Elias went straight to the hull breach, prying open the panel to reach the comms. Relay. The damage was worse than he thought. Sand in every circuit, wiring frayed. He was elbow-deep in cables when Soraya's voice cut through the stillness. "Captain, look." He turned. In the far distance, above the horizon, something was moving. Not a ship. Too large. It was dark, with jagged wings like a bird of prey, and it seemed to glide without effort. Elias felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. "That's not Velari, is it?" Soraya's expression was grim. "No, that is Nixon." The shadow grew larger as it approached, silent and terrible against the bright sky. Elias worked faster, but his hands weren't steady. His mind kept replaying her earlier words. They take, they learn, and they destroy. When the comms panel finally sparked to life, he exhaled in relief, but Soraya's hand gripped his arm. "Too late," she said. "They have seen us." Elias looked up and his stomach tightened. The massive ship had changed course. It was coming straight for them. The Nixon warship was like nothing Elias had ever seen. It didn't roar or leave a trail of heat. It moved silently, gliding above the desert with a strange grace, as if it were part of the air itself. Its surface shimmered faintly, scales of dark metal overlapping like armor on some ancient beast. Soraya pulled him back into the shadow of the ship's hull. "Stay down," she whispered. The massive vessel passed overhead, blocking out one of the suns. Elias felt the temperature drop slightly, a cold shadow swallowing the heat for a brief, uneasy moment. "They've scanned us," Soraya said quietly. "They will not forget our location." Elias gritted his teeth. "Then we need to move." But Soraya shook her head. "If we run now, we will draw more of their hunters. The Nixon work like a pack. One ship marks the prey, others close in." He looked at the horizon, imagining more of those massive shapes drifting toward them. "Then what's the plan?" She hesitated, her gaze fixed on the retreating shadow in the sky. "First, you must understand what you are dealing with." Elias crouched beside her, listening as she spoke. "The Nixon are old, older than my people, older than yours. They come from beyond the mapped stars, where light itself moves slower. They do not trade. They do not build cities. They do not farm. They hunt, Captain Trent, not for food, but for what you might call trophies." Trophies? Elias asked. Sariah's expression hardened. Knowledge, technology, the minds of those they catch. They drain them, pull memories, skills, secrets, and add them to themselves. Every ship they take makes them stronger. Elias let that sink in. And your people? The Villari? You've been fighting them? Fighting, hiding, losing, she said bitterly. The Nixon only come in small numbers at first. They test a world. If they find it weak, they return with more ships until nothing remains. Elias rubbed his forehead. If they're here, it means this world is their next target. Yes. And if they've seen you, they will follow you back to your colonies. That thought made his chest tighten. Humanity had faced threats before, pirates, rival colonies, but nothing like this. If the Nixon reached human space, Elias knew Earth wouldn't be ready. He closed the comms panel and pulled the small relay unit free. This is all I can take. If we can power it somewhere safe, I can send a warning. Sariah gave a small nod. Then we go west. There is a Villari outpost hidden in the canyons. If I can reach it, I can send word to my fleet. You think they'll help a human? Elias asked. Her eyes softened slightly. If I tell them you are under my debt, they will listen. They set off immediately, keeping to the shadows of the dunes and ridges. The heat pressed down on them like a heavy hand. Every so often, Elias glanced at the sky, half expecting to see the dark shape return. The desert was strangely silent. No animals, no wind, only the crunch of their boots in the sand. After several hours, they reached a dry riverbed that wound between tall cliffs. The shade was a relief, but it also felt like a trap, the high walls closing in above them. Elias was adjusting the strap of his pack when he noticed movement ahead. A small insect-like drone hovered in the shadows, its many eyes glowing faintly. Nixon, Sariah hissed. The drone tilted its head as if studying them. Then, with a sudden burst of speed, it darted toward them. Elias dropped his pack, pulling his sidearm in one smooth motion. Two sharp bursts of plasma fire lit the shadows, striking the drone's body. It spiraled down, smoking, and crashed into the sand. Not subtle, Elias muttered. They will know where it died, Sariah warned. We must move faster. They pushed on, following the winding riverbed deeper into the cliffs. The rock formations grew taller, their surfaces carved by centuries of wind and sand. By sunset, they reached a narrow gorge where the walls glowed red in the fading light. Sariah paused, scanning the sky. We are close, she said. Elias looked around but saw nothing except rock and shadow. Close to what? Before she could answer, a shadow passed overhead, not massive like the warship, but smaller, sharper. A Nixon scout ship swept over the gorge, its engines whisper quiet. Cover! Sariah grabbed his arm, pulling him into a hollow in the cliff wall. They pressed themselves against the stone as the ship slowed, hovering just above the gorge. Elias's pulse pounded in his ears. He could hear the faint hum of the scout's sensors sweeping back and forth. After a long moment, the ship moved on, disappearing into the distance. Sariah exhaled slowly. They are hunting us already. Elias tightened his grip on the relay unit. Then we'd better make sure we're worth the chase. They moved again, finally reaching a point where the gorge widened into a hidden canyon. The air here was cooler, and Elias noticed faint markings on the rocks, curved, elegant symbols that glowed faintly in the dark. This is it, Sariah said, approaching a sheer wall. She placed her hand against one of the symbols, and the rock shimmered. Slowly, a doorway appeared, sliding open without a sound. Elias blinked. You've been holding out on me. She allowed herself a small smile. Some secrets are worth keeping, until you need them. They stepped inside, the door sealing shut behind them. The air was cooler here, and the walls pulsed faintly, with soft blue light. Elias looked around at the sleek alien technology built into the stone. "This your people's work?" "Yes," she said. "A listening post. We use it to track Nixon movements." As she moved toward a control panel, Elias followed. "Then let's send our message before those things come back." Soraya's fingers danced over the controls. The room filled with a low hum as the systems came alive, but before the signal could be sent, an alarm blared, a sharp, rising tone that made Elias's stomach sink. Soraya's eyes widened. "They found us." Elias looked at the sealed door. "Then we fight or we run." Her gaze met his, steady and calm. "Both." The alarm echoed through the hidden canyon like a low, urgent heartbeat. Elias and Soraya had just finished calibrating the signal to alert the Valari fleet when the first shadows appeared at the doorway. Sleek figures in dark, reflective armor moved silently, weapons in hand. "Valari strike team." Elias froze, gripping his sidearm. "I told you they'd find us," he muttered. Soraya's eyes narrowed. "They do not forgive trespassers. Stay calm. Follow my lead." The first Valari stepped, inside scanning the room. Their helmets hid their faces, but Elias could feel the intensity of their stare. The Valari were tall, elegant, and precise, moving with perfect synchronization. Every step they took seemed calculated, as if part of a larger, invisible design. "Step away from him," Soraya said, her voice steady but firm. The leader of the strike team tilted his head slightly, acknowledging her but did not move. He spoke in the Valari tongue, and the translator quickly converted it. "He is a human trespasser. By law, he must be taken for review." Elias raised his hand slowly. "Wait, he's under your protection, right?" Soraya's gaze hardened. "Do not harm him. He saved my life. He is under my debt." The room fell silent. In Valari culture, life debt was sacred. Once given, it was binding. The leader's head tilted, as if weighing the weight of her words. "Debt is unusual among humans," the leader said, "but it is binding. He may remain under your supervision." Elias blinked. "Under my supervision?" Soraya ignored him, her attention on the leader. "We have larger concerns," she said. "The Nixon are nearby. If you do not act, they will destroy this canyon and everything in it." The leader's eyes shifted to the hidden canyon outside. The distant hum of Nixon engines could be felt even here. Elias exhaled slowly. He hadn't expected the Valari to be so reasonable. "Well," he said, "looks like we have a team now." Soraya gave him a brief glance, then nodded to the Valari leader. "We need shuttles, supplies, and guidance. I will take him outside to plant a tracking beacon on the Nixon flagship." Elias froze. "Wait, what?" She didn't turn. "You are coming with me." He hesitated. "Are you sure this is a good idea? That ship is huge, massive. We'd be walking into a trap." She placed a hand on his shoulder, firm but gentle. "If we do not act, your colonies will be next. I cannot do this alone. You have a debt, Captain Trent. You saved my life. Now you must help save others." He swallowed hard, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on him. It wasn't just his life anymore. It was countless others. The Valari strike team moved quickly, setting up supplies for the mission. Elias helped load tools and devices into a sleek black shuttle. Soraya checked the beacon, ensuring it would link with the Valari, fleet's sensors once activated. As they approached the canyon's edge, Soraya whispered, "This is our chance. Stay focused. Every mistake can be fatal." Elias nodded, gripping the controls of the shuttle. "Focused," he repeated, though his hands shook slightly. The shuttle lifted silently, rising above the canyon walls. Below them, the desert stretched, out endlessly, the dunes and cliffs now small and distant. Soraya guided them toward the Nixon flagship, hovering at the edge of the atmosphere. Its shape was sleek and predatory, the dark scales shimmering in the fading light. Elias could feel the energy radiating from it, like heat from a living furnace. As they approached, the flagship's sensors activated, scanning the shuttle. A faint hum filled the cabin, vibrating through the metal floor. "Stay calm," Soraya said. "We move slowly, precisely, no sudden actions." Elias followed her instructions, holding the shuttle steady as she prepared the beacon. The device was small, no larger than a human hand, but its function was deadly. Once planted, it would allow the Volari fleet to track the flagship's every movement. Soraya moved to the outer hull. "I will attach the beacon. You cover me." Elias aimed the shuttle's small defensive turrets at the approaching drones. A few appeared, their small, fast bodies darting like insects. He fired carefully, disabling them without causing excessive noise. Soraya's fingers worked quickly, fastening the beacon to the hull. A faint light pulsed from it, signaling the connection. Suddenly, the flagship's doors opened, and Nixon warriors emerged. Their forms were alien, armored in black shells that gleamed under the stars. They moved with speed and coordination, weapons raised. Elias fired the shuttle's turrets, forcing some of the warriors to take cover. Soraya called out, "Move inside, now!" Elias swung the shuttle around the hull. "Hang on!" The two of them darted toward the shuttle, weaving between Nixon warriors. Soraya leapt aboard just as Elias slammed the door shut. The shuttle shot, away from the flagship, dodging bursts of plasma fire. Soraya pressed herself against the side, breathing hard but smiling faintly. "You see? You are faster than you think." Elias laughed, adrenaline flooding his veins. "Faster than I think. Huh? You should see me on Earth traffic." She shook her head, amusement in her eyes. "We do not have traffic like that here." The flagship was behind them now, disappearing slowly into the darkness. The beacon's signal pulsed quietly, unseen by the Nixon but deadly in its effect. Elias glanced at Soraya. "You owe me, remember?" Her smile was quiet but knowing. "Captain, Trent, debt is no longer the question. It is about friendship. That is far stronger than a simple obligation." Elias felt a rare warmth spread through him. In this harsh galaxy, among alien deserts, predators, and hidden fleets, he had found an ally unlike any he had imagined. The shuttle accelerated toward the hidden Volari outpost, leaving the deadly warship behind. But Elias knew this was only the beginning. The Nixon were out there, hunting, waiting, and he and Soraya were now firmly in their path. And yet, for the first time in days, he felt hope. The hidden Volari outpost was a cluster of dark metal structures, carved into the cliffside so that from the desert below it looked like part of the rock. Elias and Soraya had barely landed the shuttle when they were greeted by a small team of Volari engineers and scouts. "You have done well to survive," one of the scouts said, her voice steady, eyes scanning Elias with curiosity. "Few humans endure even a sandstorm here." Elias smiled faintly. "I have good company." He nodded toward Soraya, who gave a slight, approving glance. They moved quickly inside the facility. Soraya had already briefed the Volari on the situation. The Nixon flagship had been sighted above the desert, and it was heading into uncharted space, possibly toward human colonies. The Volari engineers set to work, fitting Elias and Soraya with a small, stealth-capable shuttle. It was far smaller than the massive Volari vessels, but perfect for infiltration. "This shuttle is cloaked and shielded," Soraya explained as they climbed aboard. "It will not show on Nixon sensors unless they scan closely." Elias nodded, strapping himself into the pilot seat. "Sounds perfect for a sneak-in. Now I just have to keep my hands steady." Soraya chuckled softly. Then keep them steady. We do this together. The shuttle lifted silently, slipping past the canyon, and into the cold void above the desert. Stars stretched infinitely, distant and bright. Elias had flown many ships before, but this moment, facing the Nixon flagship directly, felt heavier. The flagship was enormous, a predatory leviathan in the dark space. Its black, segmented hull pulsed faintly with a strange light, almost as if it were alive. The closer they got, the more Elias realized how alien it was. Organic and mechanical, blended into one terrifying machine. Soraya guided the shuttle toward a maintenance bay on the flagship's outer hull. "We enter here," she said, pointing to a panel covered in alien markings. "Once inside, move quickly. Every second counts." Elias nodded, hands tightening on the controls. The shuttle latched onto the hull, and Soraya slid out first, magnetic boots securing her to the metallic surface. Elias followed, gripping her shoulder briefly to steady himself. The airlock hissed open. The interior of the Nixon ship was alive. Walls pulsed faintly, and soft vibrations ran underfoot. Light reflected off the dark surfaces, creating strange shadows that shifted unnaturally. Elias felt a chill despite the insulated suit. "Stay close," Soraya whispered. "They sense movement and energy. If we make noise, they will detect us immediately." They moved silently through narrow corridors. Elias's heart pounded with every step, the weight of the mission pressing on him. He glanced at Soraya. Her teal-blue skin seemed to glow faintly in the dim light. She moved like a predator herself, graceful, precise, and utterly focused. After several minutes of tense movement, they reached the central chamber. It was enormous, with glowing nodes floating along the walls. In the center floated a massive core, surrounded by cables and alien machines. This was the brain of the Nixon ship. Soraya approached the core carefully. "The beacon goes here," she said, indicating a small recess in the machinery. She handed Elias the device. He took it, feeling the hum of energy pulsing through his fingers. "Do we just stick it in?" "Gently. Connect it to the core's energy node," she instructed. Elias worked, following her guidance. The beacon clicked into place. A faint light pulsed from it, linking to the Volari fleet. Suddenly, alarms blared, a shrill noise that made Elias jump. Red lights pulsed along the walls. "They've detected us!" Soraya shouted. Elias looked around. Nixon warriors were emerging from the shadows, their black armored forms moving with terrifying speed. Their eyes glowed faintly, scanning the intruders. "Cover me!" Soraya yelled, pulling a compact energy weapon from her belt. She fired with precision, disabling 2 Nixon warriors before they could react. Elias scrambled to man the shuttles. Small turrets, firing carefully. The corridors erupted with flashes of light, shadows of the Nixon warriors dancing on the walls. He aimed and fired at openings, giving Soraya room to move. The two worked together seamlessly. Soraya guided Elias, calling out targets and openings while he used his human ingenuity to improvise attacks. Despite the chaos, they moved like a single unit, precise and deadly. "Almost there," Soraya called. "Run to the outer exit." "I'll cover!" Elias didn't hesitate. He dashed through the corridor, ducking plasma bursts and leaping over fallen debris. Behind him, Soraya held the line, firing with uncanny accuracy. Finally, Elias reached the shuttle. He opened the hatch and Soraya leapt inside just as a Nixon warrior lunged toward her. The door slammed shut, sealing them in. "Hang on!" Elias shouted, and the shuttle shot away from the flagship. The massive ship loomed behind them, its engines glowing faintly as it began a slow rotation. Nixon warriors pursued them briefly, but the shuttle's stealth system activated, rendering them invisible to most sensors. Soraya caught her breath, her expression both fierce and relieved. "You see, we can do this together." Elias laughed, adrenaline still surging. I hope my Earth training counts for something, she smiled faintly. It does. More than you know. The beacon pulsed quietly, its signal hidden but deadly. In effect, the Valari fleet would soon be able to track the flagship wherever it went. Humanity and Saraya's people had a fighting chance. Elias glanced at her. So, you owe me, remember? Saraya shook her head, her eyes softening. Captain Trent, debt is no longer the question. It is about trust, friendship. That is far stronger than obligation. Elias felt warmth spread through him. In the vast, cold galaxy where danger lurked in every shadow, he had found someone who understood the meaning of loyalty and courage. The shuttle accelerated into the darkness of space, leaving the Nixon flagship behind. But Elias knew the fight was far from over. The Nixon were still out there, and the galaxy was not yet safe. Yet as he glanced at Saraya, he realized something important. In a universe full of fear and uncertainty, humans and Valari working together might just be stronger than anything the Nixon could throw at them. And for the first time in days, Elias allowed himself to feel hope. The Valari fleet appeared silently from the shadow of a nearby asteroid field, guided by the beacon Elias and Saraya had planted. Massive ships surrounded the Nixon flagship, their weapons gleaming in the starlight. Elias tightened his grip on the shuttle controls. We did it. They actually listened. Saraya didn't smile. Her eyes were fixed on the flagship. Not yet. They will respond, but the first strike is ours. Watch closely. Learn, Captain Trent. The Valari ships fired in a coordinated volley. Energy beams cut through the void, striking the Nixon vessel and forcing it to maneuver defensively. Elias's heart pounded. Every move they made was precise, flawless. He realized how far his human training could go when combined with the experience of an advanced species like the Valari. Saraya leaned close. We have to get inside again. The core of the ship must be disabled. Only then will they be slowed. Elias swallowed. Again? We barely made it out alive the first time. Her expression softened, but her tone was firm. This is our duty. Do not hesitate. They piloted the shuttle toward the flagship once more, weaving through Valari fire and Nixon defenses. The black hull loomed over them, monstrous and alive. The shuttle's stealth shields flickered as Nixon scanning drones swarmed nearby. Saraya pointed toward a secondary maintenance hatch. Here. Smaller, less defended. We can reach the core through this route. Elias nodded, moving the shuttle into position. The hatch opened smoothly under Saraya's touch. They slipped inside, stepping into the dark, pulsating corridors of the Nixon ship. The corridors were alive with sound, a faint hum, almost musical, vibrating through the walls. They moved quickly, silently, Saraya guiding the way with her keen instincts. Then they reached the central chamber. The core glowed brighter this time, pulsing like a heart. Elias felt a strange energy resonate through him, cold yet powerful. Attach the second beacon, Saraya instructed. This one will disrupt their core and allow the Valari to take them completely offline. Elias worked quickly, connecting the device to the core's energy node. The light pulsed, syncing with the first beacon outside. Suddenly, the alarms blared. Nixon warriors appeared, faster and more numerous than before. Their black armor reflected the pulsing light, eyes glowing with a strange intelligence. Saraya drew her weapon. "Cover me!" she shouted, moving with fluid precision, taking down warrior after warrior with deadly accuracy. Elias fired the shuttle's small defense turrets, improvising as the corridors filled with chaos. Despite the danger, they moved in perfect sync. Saraya's calm and focus gave Elias courage, guiding him through the most dangerous moments. "Almost there," she called. "We can do this!" He nodded, heart pounding. The last few warriors fell to Soraya's precision shots and Elias's carefully aimed fire. Finally, the core pulsed one last time before the beacon activated fully. The massive Nixon ship shuddered violently as its systems were disrupted. Lights flickered. Engines groaned. The flagship spun slowly, unable to control its movements. Elias exhaled, relief flooding him. "We did it! We actually did it!" Soraya's expression softened, a faint smile on her lips. "Yes. And now the galaxy has a chance. Your people, my people, they are safe, at least for now." The shuttle rose above the core chamber, exiting the ship. Outside, the Valari fleet had begun their final strike. The Nixon flagship, crippled and disoriented, was surrounded and immobilized. Elias's heart soared. Together, humans and Valari had turned the tide. They had faced an enemy that seemed unstoppable, and they had survived. As the battle subsided, Soraya placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. Her eyes were calm, deep with emotion. "Captain Trent, you saved my life, and you stood beside me when others would have run. You risked yourself for more than just me, for countless lives. Your debt is repaid." Elias blinked, unsure how to respond. I didn't expect." She smiled faintly, her teal-blue skin glowing softly in the starlight. "You never owe me anything again. You acted because it was right. That is what matters. That is the true courage of your people." Her words left him speechless, not because he didn't understand them, but because they were more than a simple repayment. They were recognition, respect, and trust. He finally found his voice. I won't forget this, Soraya. You saved me as much as I saved you." She shook her head gently. "We saved each other. That is how allies are made, Captain Trent. That is how friendships are forged." Elias looked out at the crippled Nixon flagship, then back at Soraya. In that moment, he understood something profound. In the vast universe, humanity was not alone. Their courage, intelligence, and willingness to act, even against overwhelming odds, made them a force worth respecting. And sometimes, survival wasn't just about skill or luck. It was about standing together, trusting others, and facing impossible odds with determination. The Valari fleet guided them safely back to the hidden outpost. Engineers and scouts moved quickly, repairing their shuttle and celebrating the victory. But Elias's mind was still on Soraya. She turned to him as the shuttle landed. "You have done more than you realize," she said quietly. "The galaxy remembers such acts, Captain Trent. Your people will have allies in times to come because of you." He nodded slowly, humbled. "I only did what I could. But I'll remember this. Always." Soraya gave a soft smile, the kind that carried strength, warmth, and an unspoken promise. "That is enough. That is more than enough." Elias realized then that the words he had said weeks ago, "You owe me," were no longer needed. The debt had been transformed into trust, respect, and an unspoken bond stronger than any obligation. As he looked at her, he simply said, "Thank you." Soraya tilted her head, her gaze steady, and with quiet confidence replied, "No, Captain Trent, I thank you." Elias stared at her, speechless. In the midst of stars, alien fleets, and battles that had tested them to the limit, a simple, honest truth had emerged. Courage, loyalty, and humanity could shine, even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, and with that, he knew the adventure had changed him forever. The desert planet below would heal. The Valari would recover. Humanity's colonies would remain safe for now. But Elias Trent had learned something even more important. When humans acted with courage, compassion, and determination, they were capable of greatness beyond measure. And sometimes, a single act of saving a life could ripple across the stars in ways no one could predict.